The weight of what's coming. The evening air was heavy with silence as Jesus walked through the darkness, his disciples trailing behind him, unaware of the crushing burden pressing upon their teacher. The Passover meal had concluded, but its echoes still lingered in their hearts. The breaking of bread, the cup passed from hand to hand, the strange words Jesus spoke about his body and his blood. Yet now, with the meal behind them, they walked toward the Mount of Olives. Jesus knew where he was going. It was not simply to a quiet place to pray. It was to the battlefield of his soul, Gethsemane. He led them through the olive trees, the dim moonlight casting long shadows across the ground. His steps slowed as they approached the familiar grove. Jesus stopped at the entrance of the garden. "Sit here while I go over there and pray," he said to most of them. Then he took with him Peter, James, and John, the three who had witnessed his glory on the mountaintop. But this would be no Mount of Transfiguration. This would be the valley of deepest sorrow. His face had changed. His steps were slower. The calm assurance that had always marked his presence now gave way to a visible trembling. The disciples noticed. Something was different. Jesus, the one who calmed storms, cast out demons, and spoke with divine authority, was now sorrowful and troubled. And then he said it plainly, without reserve. "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me." These words pierced the night. Jesus, the Son of God, admitting sorrow so deep it felt like death. Not because of physical pain, though that would come, but because of the spiritual storm swelling inside him. Gethsemane wasn't about fear of Roman whips or nails. It was about drinking the cup of divine wrath, bearing the full weight of humanity's sin, and experiencing separation from the Father for the first time in all eternity. And the mere approach of that moment caused his soul to groan with sorrow. He moved a little farther into the garden alone. His knees met the cold earth, his face fell to the ground. And there, under the canopy of ancient olive trees, Jesus began to pray. "My Father, if it is possible, may this cup be taken from me. Yet not as I will, but as you will." The first cry of his soul revealed the storm inside. He did not pretend it was easy. He did not hide his anguish. He prayed honestly. With full awareness of what was coming, Jesus asked for another way, a different path, a route that didn't lead through agony, and yet in the same breath he surrendered. "Not my will, yours be done." Minutes passed, maybe longer. Jesus returned to his disciples and found them asleep. The men he trusted, the friends he had poured into for years, the ones he had just warned about the coming trial. Asleep. He woke them, especially Peter, who had so boldly promised loyalty just hours earlier. "Could you not keep watch with me for 1 hour?" His voice wasn't angry. It was grieved. "Watch and pray so that you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak." He walked away again. Deeper into prayer. This time more intense. The weight was increasing. The decision more costly. The ground beneath him seemed to tremble as he knelt again and cried out, "My Father, if it is not possible for this cup to be taken away unless I drink it, may your will be done." His body convulsed with sorrow. His sweat became like drops of blood falling to the ground, a rare medical condition called hematidrosis, caused by extreme emotional stress. The pain inside him was no longer just spiritual. It was physical. Back to his disciples. Again, they slept, eyes heavy with exhaustion, hearts unprepared for what was about to unfold. Jesus didn't shake them this time. He looked at them with sadness and returned to prayer once more. The third time. Each time the prayer more resolved, the struggle more complete. He wasn't praying for rescue anymore. He was yielding, completely. If there was no other way, he would walk it. If the cup could not pass unless he drank it, then let it be so. The sun was surrendering. And then, suddenly, the peace of resolve settled over his face. The agony had not left, but his decision was made. He stood, blood still clinging to his forehead, hands still trembling, but his eyes now clear. The Father had not removed the cup, but he had strengthened the Son. Jesus walked back to his disciples one last time. "Are you still sleeping and resting?" he asked. "Look, the hour has come, and the Son of Man is delivered into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us go. Here comes my betrayer." And with those words, the garden was no longer a place of prayer. It became the place of arrest. Footsteps approached, lanterns flickered, swords clanked. The peace of Gethsemane was shattered by the noise of betrayal. But Jesus, now resolved, now surrendered, stood calmly, ready. Not because the pain had vanished, but because his will was now fully aligned with the Father's. The battle in the garden had been the real war, and he had won it not with power, but with submission. The silent surrender, when heaven didn't intervene. The sound of approaching footsteps broke through the garden's hush. Torches danced in the night, casting flickering light across olive trees now marked by the weight of what had taken place. Jesus stood where he had prayed, his robe damp from sweat and blood, his face solemn but steady. The decision was made. There would be no running, no resistance. He had already surrendered where it mattered most, on his knees, before the Father. Now he would walk the road laid before him. Judas Iscariot stepped forward, his figure outlined by torchlight, his face betraying both guilt and purpose. He came close to Jesus, leaned in, and kissed him, a sign previously used for reverence and friendship now corrupted into betrayal. "Rabbi," he said. Jesus looked into Judas's eyes, not with anger, but with sorrow. "Judas, are you betraying the Son of Man with a kiss?" The soldiers moved in, their swords drawn, but Jesus didn't flinch. The disciples, startled and afraid, asked if they should fight. One didn't wait for the answer. Peter lunged forward and swung his sword, cutting off the ear of the high priest's servant. But Jesus stopped him. "Put your sword back in its place," he said. "For all who draw the sword will die by the sword. Do you think I cannot call on my Father, and he will at once put at my disposal more than 12 legions of angels? But how then would the scriptures be fulfilled that say, 'It must happen in this way'?" His words hung in the air like thunder without a sound. Heaven could have intervened. Armies of angels could have descended, the power was there. But Jesus chose silence. He chose surrender. The soldiers seized him, bound him, led him away. His disciples scattered into the night. The one who had walked on water, opened blind eyes, and raised the dead was now being dragged through the dirt by the very people he came to save. And he let it happen. Not because he was powerless, but because love held him more tightly than chains ever could. Every step toward Caiaphas's house was a step deeper into obedience, not to man but to the will of the Father. Inside the high priest's courtyard, a mock trial began. False witnesses were called. Their stories didn't agree. Lies piled on top of lies. Jesus stood silently. The very word of God chose not to speak. The same mouth that had calmed storms now remained closed before accusers. The high priest grew frustrated. "Aren't you going to answer? What is this testimony that these men are bringing against you?" Still, Jesus remained silent. Then the question that cut to the core. "I charge you under oath by the living God. Tell us if you are the Messiah, the Son of God." Finally, Jesus answered, not with defiance but with truth. "You have said so," he replied, "but I say to all of you, from now on you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One and coming on the clouds of heaven." It was all they needed. The high priest tore his clothes. "Blasphemy," he shouted. "Why do we need any more witnesses? Look, now you have heard the blasphemy. What do you think?" And the answer came like stones. "He is worthy of death." They spit on him, struck him, mocked him, covered his eyes and punched him, laughing as they demanded, "Prophesy to us, Messiah. Who hit you?" And Jesus took it, not with bitterness, not with resistance, but with resolve. Every insult was absorbed, without retaliation. Every blow met with grace. Not because he was weak, but because he was walking the path of submission, one that few would ever understand. Outside, Peter lingered in the shadows. The one who had promised loyalty to the death now sat near a fire, denying he ever knew Jesus. 3 times the rooster crowed and Peter's heart shattered. Jesus inside turned and looked at him. No words, just a look. A look that spoke of sorrow, love, and deeper understanding. Peter fled into the night weeping bitterly. The cost of surrender was not only Jesus's to bear. Those who loved him were now facing their own storms of failure and regret. Morning light crept over the horizon. Jesus, having spent the night in custody, was now transferred to Pilate. The Roman governor held his fate in his hands, or so it seemed. Pilate questioned him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus replied, "You say that I am." Accusations flew from the chief priests and elders, but Jesus remained silent. Pilate marveled, "Don't you hear the testimony they are bringing against you?" Still, Jesus gave no answer. Silence again. Not weakness, not fear, but surrender to a greater will. Pilate found no fault in him, but the crowd, stirred by leaders driven by fear and envy, demanded blood. "Crucify him," they shouted. "Give us Barabbas." Pilate, trying to wash his hands of the matter, asked what he should do with Jesus. The response echoed through history, "Crucify him." And so Pilate, fearing the crowd more than truth, handed him over. And yet through it all, Jesus did not resist. He didn't beg for mercy. He didn't defend himself. He didn't run. Because Gethsemane had already happened. The cup had been accepted. The path had been embraced. The Son of God was not being swept along by the chaos of angry men. He was walking forward, step by step, under the weight of divine purpose. The silence of Jesus in those hours wasn't absence. It was power restrained by love. It was the choice to endure what could have been avoided, to be judged unjustly, to be mocked unfairly, to be condemned by the very mouths he had created. But through it all, he chose obedience. He chose the Father's will. The cross wasn't something that happened to Jesus. It was something he walked toward, with eyes open, heart steady, and love unshaken. The road of thorns and obedience through pain. The sky darkened slowly as the soldiers led Jesus away. Their hands gripped his arms, but they didn't need to. He walked willingly. He didn't plead for freedom. He didn't curse their cruelty. He didn't protest the injustice, because long before they arrested him, he had surrendered to something greater. He wasn't being dragged to the cross. He was walking there, each step echoing the silent vow made in Gethsemane. "Not my will, but yours be done." Inside the Roman barracks, they stripped him. Exposing more than just his flesh, they stripped his dignity. The soldiers laughed as they fashioned a crown of thorns, each thorn long and curved, cruelly twisted into a mockery of royalty. They pressed it into his head, forcing it down until blood ran freely. They wrapped him in a scarlet robe, knelt in fake reverence, and mocked, "Hail, King of the Jews!" Then came the blows, fists to his face, slaps, a reed to strike the crown deeper. Yet still Jesus remained silent. Every insult, every wound received without retaliation. He bore it, not because he deserved it, but because we did. Then came the flogging. The Roman scourge was no ordinary whip. It was designed to tear. Sharp fragments of bone and metal embedded in leather straps ripped into his back, again and again, skin shredded, muscles exposed, blood pouring onto stone. Many didn't survive Roman scourging, but Jesus endured it, not because he was numb to pain, but because he was obedient. The cup was not just spiritual anguish, it included this, and he had already said yes. When they were finished, they put his own clothes back on him, now soaked in blood, and led him out. The crossbar, heavy, rough, splintered, was placed on his shoulders. His back, already raw, now scraped with every step. The crowd followed. Some jeered, some looked away. One man, Simon of Cyrene, was pulled from the road to carry the cross when Jesus stumbled. But Jesus kept moving forward, bruised, bleeding, barely standing, still obedient. They reached Golgotha, the place of the skull, a hill that would become the altar of history. They offered him wine mixed with gall, a bitter drink meant to dull the pain. He tasted it, then refused. He would feel everything. He would absorb the full weight of the cup. Then they nailed him down, metal spikes driven through flesh and bone, hands that had healed now pierced, feet that had walked among the lost now, bound to wood. The pain was beyond description, yet no scream of protest, no call for rescue, just silence and the resolve of obedience. The cross was raised, the weight of his body pulled against the nails. Breathing became labored, every breath a choice, and above him a sign, Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. What was meant to mock told the truth, but those beneath the cross didn't see it. Soldiers gambled for his clothes. Religious leaders mocked. He saved others, but he can't save himself. They laughed. Let him come down now from the cross and we'll believe in him. But he wouldn't, because Gethsemane had already settled that question. Among the mockers stood his mother, Mary, whose womb had carried the Son of God, now watched him die. Beside her stood John, the disciple whom he loved. Even in agony, Jesus saw them. "Woman, behold your son," he said. Then to John, "Behold your mother." In his final hours, still thinking of others, still loving, still obedient. As the hours passed, darkness fell over the land. Noon to 3. The sky turned black. Creation itself groaned. And then came the cry, not of pain, but of separation. My God, why have you forsaken me?" For the first time in eternity, Jesus experienced what it meant to be apart from the Father. The crushing silence from heaven, the holy fracture, not because the Father stopped loving him, but because the weight of sin, our sin, was upon him. And sin separates. Even the sinless Son felt it. This was the cup, not just the cross, but the turning away, the abandonment, the silence. And still, Jesus did not come down. He remained. He stayed. Until the very end. And then, with one final breath, he said it. It is finished. Not I am finished. It is. The work, the mission, the obedience, the sacrifice. The cup had been fully drunk. And then, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. Even in death he trusted. He surrendered, he bowed his head, gave up his spirit, and the earth responded. The ground shook. Rocks split. The curtain in the temple tore in two from top to bottom. The barrier between man and God was removed. Access was granted, and a Roman centurion, standing nearby, saw it all and whispered what the world was only beginning to understand. Surely, this was the Son of God. Gethsemane had begun it. The cross had fulfilled it. Every moment of silence, every wound, every drop of blood had not been random. It was all obedience, chosen, endured, finished, not out of defeat, but love. The stillness between. The day God seemed silent. The body of Jesus was taken down with care, his skin torn, his hands pierced, his side wounded, lifeless, yet still sacred. Joseph of Arimathea, a member of the council who had not consented to Jesus' condemnation, stepped forward with courage. He asked Pilate for the body. Pilate, surprised that Jesus had died so quickly, confirmed with the centurion and granted the request. Alongside Nicodemus, who once came to Jesus by night, Joseph wrapped the body in linen, along with spices. Silent acts of reverence. Two secret followers now stepped into the open. No more fear, no more hiding. The cross had broken something in them. Broken, yes, but awakened too. They laid Jesus in a new tomb cut in rock where no one had been laid, a borrowed tomb, because he would not need it long. A stone was rolled against the entrance, heavy, Final. The women who followed Jesus from Galilee saw where he was laid. Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, others too. They watched quietly. The Sabbath was approaching. They had no time to anoint the body properly. So they made a plan. After the Sabbath, they would return. Then came the stillness. The long silence of Saturday, the day between the agony and the glory, between the cross and the empty tomb. The city was hushed, the sky clear. Birds still sang, children still played. But beneath the surface, grief trembled. The followers of Jesus were scattered, hiding behind locked doors, hearts full of questions, too painful to ask out loud. Had it all been for nothing? Had they believed a lie? They remembered the miracles, the teachings, the authority with which he spoke. But now he was gone. The religious leaders, however, were not resting. They remembered his words. "After 3 days, I will rise again." So they went to Pilate. "Sir," they said, "we remember that while he was still alive, that deceiver said, 'After 3 days I will rise again.' Give the order for the tomb to be made secure until the 3rd day. Otherwise his disciples may come and steal the body and tell the people that he has been raised from the dead." Pilate agreed. "Take a guard. Go, make the tomb as secure as you know how." So they sealed the stone. They stationed Roman guards, trained, men armed and alert, human effort to hold back divine promise, as if ropes and wax could stop resurrection, as if steel and stone could outlast the breath of God. But the fear of the priests said more than their words ever could. Somewhere deep inside, they knew something was not over. And still, silence. The disciples mourned. Peter remembered his denial, every word still echoing. John remembered the cross, the moment Jesus gave him his mother. Mary remembered her son's first breath, and now his last. The world kept spinning, but their world had stopped. That day, there were no healings, no sermons, no parables, just memories, just stillness. No voice from heaven, no angels in the sky, no thunder, no miracles, just the waiting. It was a silence that tested faith, because faith is not forged in fireworks, but in darkness. In the space where God seems gone but isn't, in the day between defeat and deliverance. Saturday was the echo of the garden, the moment when obedience costs but reward still hides behind the veil. Jesus had trusted the Father into death. Now his followers were being asked to trust in the waiting, and somewhere, unseen by earthly eyes, eternity was shifting. Death had swallowed a life it could not hold, hell celebrated, but too soon. The silence of Saturday was not emptiness. It was divine suspense. The womb of resurrection was forming in the tomb of despair. The breath had left Jesus' lungs, but heaven was holding its own. No one knew what was coming, but the stone would not stay sealed. The grave would not remain occupied. The sorrow would not last forever, but none of them knew that yet. For now, they only had memories, pain, and the hope they didn't dare speak aloud. Stillness, silence, waiting. But even in the silence, the will of the Father was unfolding. Dawn of triumph. When the stone was rolled away. The first day of the week began in quiet. Before the sun lit the hills, before the city stirred, footsteps made their way toward the tomb. Mary Magdalene and the other women who had followed, Jesus faithfully rose early with spices in hand. Their mission was simple: honor the dead, but grief still clung to every breath. As they walked, one question lingered among them: who will roll the stone away? It was large, heavy, final, a symbol of the end, but they didn't turn back. Their love outweighed their fear. As they approached, they found the question answered. The stone was already moved, the guards now gone, the seal broken, the tomb open. Alarm surged. Had someone taken him? Had the final insult been added to their sorrow? But when Mary Magdalene stepped forward and looked inside, she saw more than emptiness. She saw absence with purpose. The body was not there. But this wasn't theft. It was victory. Suddenly, two figures in shining clothes appeared. The women fell to the ground, trembling. The figures spoke words that would reshape history. "Why do you look for the living among the dead? He is not here. He has risen." The impossible had happened. The silence had been shattered. The will of the Father had conquered death. The women ran. Fear and joy warred inside them, but joy was winning. They rushed to tell the others. But when they spoke, their words seemed like nonsense. The disciples didn't believe them. Grief had hardened their hearts. Hope was too risky, too painful. Still, Peter ran to the tomb. He bent low, looked inside. Linen cloths lay where a body once had. The headcloth, folded neatly. Something sacred had occurred, but he didn't yet understand. Meanwhile, Mary Magdalene had returned, alone, weeping. Her love for Jesus pulled her back to the place of his absence. Through her tears, she looked again into the tomb and saw two angels. "Woman, why are you crying?" they asked. She answered honestly, "They have taken my Lord away, and I don't know where they have put him." Then she turned and saw a man standing there. She didn't recognize him, thought he was the gardener. He asked her, "Woman, why are you crying? Who is it you are looking for?" She pleaded, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have put him and I will get him." Then the man said one word, "Mary," and everything changed. Her eyes widened, her breath caught. "Rabboni," she cried. "Teacher." It was Jesus. Alive, standing, speaking. Death had lost its grip. He told her, "Do not hold on to me, for I have not yet ascended to the Father. Go to my brothers and tell them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." The message was clear. The relationship had been restored, the gap bridged, the work completed. She obeyed, became the first herald of resurrection, the first to carry the fire of hope. Later that day, Jesus appeared to two disciples walking toward Emmaus. They didn't recognize him at first. They spoke of their disappointment, their crushed dreams. Jesus listened. Then, beginning with Moses and the prophets, he explained everything concerning himself. When they arrived at the village, they urged him to stay. At the table, he broke bread, and their eyes were opened. They saw him. He vanished. Their hearts burned within them. They ran back to Jerusalem breathless, alive with wonder. That night, behind locked doors, the disciples huddled in fear. Then Jesus appeared among them. No knock, no warning, just presence. He showed them his hands and his side, proof of pain, proof of love. Peace filled the room. He breathed on them, gave them his Spirit, commissioned them. "As the Father has sent me, I am sending you." But Thomas wasn't there. When the others told him, he refused to believe. "Unless I see the nail marks in his hands and put my finger where the nails were, I will not believe." A week later, Jesus came again. Same room, same peace. He turned to Thomas. "Put your finger here, see my hands. Reach out your hand and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe." Thomas fell to his knees. "My Lord and my God," Jesus said, "because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed." Those words would carry through generations, through centuries. They were meant for you, for every soul who would believe the resurrection not by sight, but by trust. The stone was rolled away, not so Jesus could get out, but so we could see, and so we could witness that death no longer ruled. That obedience unto death had opened the door to eternal life. What began in Gethsemane, what was tested at the cross, what was hidden on Saturday, was now revealed in glory. Resurrection didn't erase the pain, it redeemed it. It didn't undo the agony, it gave it meaning. The cup Jesus drank had not been in vain. Every drop had become a stream of salvation. The dawn had broken, and nothing would ever be the same. The Father's will fulfilled. Glory after the garden. The wind stirred gently across the hills of Galilee. Waves lapped against the shore where Jesus once walked, where he called fishermen by name, where he multiplied bread and calmed storms. Now he stood once more, resurrected, whole, scarred, and radiant. The agony of Gethsemane was no longer a distant memory, but the very path that had led here. What had begun in a garden of crushing sorrow had ended in a garden of triumph. The Son had obeyed. The Father's will had been fulfilled. Jesus appeared again to his disciples by the Sea of Tiberias. They had returned to fishing, back to what was familiar. But even in ordinary places, the extraordinary followed him. They toiled all night and caught nothing. Then at dawn, a voice called from the shore, "Friends, haven't you any fish?" They answered, "No." He said, "Throw your net on the right side of the boat and you will find some." They obeyed, and the net overflowed. 153 large fish. Yet the net did not break. John recognized him first. "It is the Lord." Peter didn't wait. He wrapped his garment and jumped into the water, swam to shore, found Jesus by a fire, fish already cooking, bread already waiting. They ate together, no great speeches, just presence, fellowship, restoration without noise. After breakfast, Jesus turned to Peter, the same Peter who had denied him 3 times. "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" "Yes, Lord," Peter replied. "You know that I love you." Jesus said, "Feed my lambs." Again, "Do you love me?" Again, Peter affirmed. Again, Jesus commissioned. A 3rd time, Jesus asked. Peter was hurt, but answered honestly. Jesus said, "Feed my sheep." 3 denials met with 3 calls. Grace replaced guilt. Purpose replaced shame. The weight of failure was lifted. Jesus didn't erase Peter's past. He transformed it. Gethsemane had taught the cost of obedience. Now Peter would learn its power. "When you were younger," Jesus said, "you dressed yourself and went where you wanted. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and someone else will dress you and lead you where you do not want to go." Jesus was foretelling Peter's death. But he didn't speak it as punishment. He spoke it as destiny, as purpose, as echo of his own submission. Then he said again the words that had started it all. "Follow me." Elsewhere, Jesus appeared to more than 500 people. He taught about the kingdom of God, opened minds to understand the scriptures, showed them how everything, from Moses to the prophets, pointed to him. The agony had been necessary. The cross had not been a tragedy. It had been a mission. And the resurrection was the seal, the proof, the fire that would ignite the world. 40 days later, he led them to the Mount of Olives. They still asked, "And Lord, are you at this time going to restore the kingdom to Israel?" They still longed for a visible revolution. But Jesus offered something greater. "You will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes upon you, and you will be my witnesses to the ends of the earth." He wasn't staying. He was sending. Then, before their eyes, he ascended, lifted into the clouds. Out of sight, but never out of reach, 2 men in white stood beside them. "Men of Galilee, why do you stand here looking into the sky? This same Jesus will come back in the same way you have seen him go." The story wasn't over. The garden had become a gateway. The agony had unlocked eternity. Jesus' obedience had opened a door no man could shut. The disciples returned to Jerusalem, not with fear, but with joy. They gathered, prayed, waited. And when the day of Pentecost came, the Spirit fell like fire. Tongues burned, voices rose, boldness surged, the gospel spread. Because one man, in a garden, said, "Not my will, but yours be done." The will of the Father wasn't comfort. It was redemption. It wasn't escape from pain, but victory through it. The obedience of Jesus wasn't just for himself, it was for the world, for every broken soul, for every sinner, for every weary heart longing to be made whole. The agony of Gethsemane wasn't weakness, it was the deepest strength, a surrender that shattered death, a prayer that opened the heavens, a moment when the Son trusted the Father, not because it was easy, but because it was right. And now, because of that night, sin has lost its grip, death has lost its sting, and all creation echoes a single truth. The will of the Father is perfect, and it has been fulfilled.